Welcome back to NeoEnglish, your podcast for learning practical English fast. Today's topic is about a famous politician and climate change. Are you ready to understand some real news and improve your English?
Great to have you with us. We're talking about Tony Blair and the net zero climate plan. Let's break it down step by step and learn useful English for conversations about current events.
First, let's introduce Tony Blair. He is a former Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. That means he used to be the leader of the UK government. For example, Barack Obama is a former President of the USA, or Angela Merkel is a former Chancellor of Germany.
Right. And today's news says Tony Blair says the current net zero push is doomed to fail. Net zero means not adding more greenhouse gases to the atmosphere than we take away. For example, a company tries to reach net zero by saving energy and planting trees, or a city uses electric buses and solar panels to help reach net zero.
The expression doomed to fail is dramatic. Doomed means something will probably not succeed, a bad result is almost certain. For example, the project was doomed because no one helped, or without practice, his test was doomed to fail.
Tony Blair is making a call for a change of course. This means he wants people to try a different plan. Example 1. The company made a change of course and stopped making old phones. Example 2. The teacher suggested a change of course after students failed the exam.
But not everyone agrees with Tony Blair. The news says his idea is rejected by Downing Street. Downing Street is where the UK Prime Minister's office is. It's like saying the White House rejected the idea, or the palace refused the invitation.
However, his idea was welcomed by the Tories and Reform. The Tories is a nickname for the Conservative Party in the UK, and Reform is a political group. So, some people liked Blair's idea, and some didn't.
The story also talks about a report from the Tony Blair Institute called The Climate Paradox: Why We Need to Reset Action on Climate Change. A paradox is something that seems strange because it mixes opposite ideas. For example, it's a paradox that the more you save time, the less time you have, or it's a paradox to feel lonely in a big crowd.
The report says global institutions like COP and the UN have failed to make sufficient progress. Sufficient means enough. For example, you need sufficient money to buy a car, or he studied a sufficient amount to pass the test.
Progress means moving forward, improving, or getting better at something. For example, I am making progress in my English, or she made good progress at her new job.
Now, let's tell the story again using simple English and our vocabulary. Tony Blair, who used to be the UK Prime Minister, thinks the world's big plan to reach net zero, not adding more pollution than we can remove, will probably not work. He says this plan is doomed to fail, which means he thinks it will not succeed. Tony Blair wants everyone to try a different plan, so he calls for a change of course.
But the UK Prime Minister's office, which is at Downing Street, says no to Tony Blair. However, two political groups, the Tories and Reform, agree with his idea. Tony Blair's group writes a report. It says world meetings, like COP and the United Nations, have not made enough or sufficient progress on climate change.
Let's quickly talk about the vocabulary and phrases we learned today. Former Prime Minister, a leader in the past. Net zero, no extra pollution added to the air. Doomed to fail, bad result is certain. Change of course, try a different plan. Downing Street, the UK Prime Minister's office. Tories, UK Conservative Party. Paradox, an idea that mixes opposites. Sufficient, enough. Progress, getting better or moving forward.
Here are two ways you can use what you learned. 1. The project is doomed to fail unless we change our plan. 2. We need sufficient energy to reach net zero in our town.
So, in summary, Tony Blair, a former UK leader, thinks the current plan to cut pollution is doomed to fail. Some political groups agree, but the Prime Minister's office does not. Tony Blair's team says big meetings haven't made sufficient progress and it's time for a change of course.
If you want to keep learning more about current events in English, subscribe to NeoEnglish. That way, you won't miss the daily news, vocabulary, and phrases.
Thanks for joining us today. Keep practicing your English and talking about the news. See you next time on NeoEnglish.